Hi, this is BK Black Krishna from manforwars.com, where I'm promoting polite patriotism to help most people look, walk, talk, and feel great, communicate well offline about what to learn online, and share information that can help them save their countries. So check out manforwars.com for more. There's PayPal /me or paypal.me/manforwars links below for donations, as well as direct deposit links, and get in touch with any questions or answers or to work together and so on. But this video is called Global Governance, UN, EU, China, France, and Germany's 4-point plan. Can local nationalists stop them? Global governance. So what does global governance mean? Well, it means exactly what it says. It means that we'll be governed globally as opposed to governed locally. So instead of one of, say, 35 million Canadians, like I am in the country of Canada, or one of, say, 335 million Americans that are voting to help control their country, we'll be one of 7 or 8 billion people around the world controlled by a global governance framework or a global government. This is not something that people are being asked about. This is not something that people are being asked to support or vote on, at least overtly or much. There's some tacit brainwashing that goes on. Gee, the climate's going to be bad in 25 years, and it affects the whole world. We need a whole world government possibly to help us, or we need to empower global governance structures, or there's terrorists all over the world. We need to empower more global governance to help us, or we should have open borders, or we should all be the same, or we should all be beige. These are plans that are coming from them, the people that want global government and global governance, as opposed to people in local countries who want that. Open borders, you can't walk around any country in the world and say, hey, we should open our borders, let anybody in. Don't be careful, not the best and brightest, not just a few that want to assimilate well. We make sure that they really want to be here and really want to fit in. No, just open the borders, don't be mean. You can't walk around and ask for that, right? So where does that come from? That comes from the United Nations. You can Google open borders or borders in UN, and you'll find all of their white papers and working papers and documents that are advocating for that. And so, when there's crap in your country that nobody wants, and yet you're all supposed to go along with, you got to go, well, how did that get here? Nobody was advocating from the grassroots up, because that came from the top down. That came from outside of your country. The United Nations and other global government institutions shove that into your country, and you, to save your country, have to get that crap out. Just like sexualizing kids. You can't walk around with a clipboard and a petition saying, excuse me, yeah, I've just got this little petition here. We think we should teach younger and younger kids more and more about more and more kinds of sex. That'd be great. High school is not enough. Elementary school is not enough. Kindergarten's not enough. Preschool's not enough. You should dress your kids in a little gray bag and let them grow up to be whatever they want. But as soon as they decide they want to switch genders, you've got to take that super seriously. But otherwise, don't make them sure they're good at being little boys and girls and little masculine and feminine creatures that can respect and empower each other and communicate well. No. You put them in a little gray bag. No blue for boys and pink for girls. No. Little gray bag, genderless, but if your boy wants to be a girl, take it super seriously. Make sure you make them all girly. If your girl wants to be a boy, take it super seriously. So you can only train your kids to be good at being a boy or girl if they switch genders. Otherwise, you're not supposed to. So if you try and walk around any country in the world, all 200 plus, and you have a petition, excuse me, we should teach little kids more and more about more and more kinds of sex. Could you sign this? You'd probably get ignored, dirty looks, told off, a punch in the face, or arrested. All perfectly normal, healthy things to happen in a culture where you want to protect your culture and your culture's kids. Perfectly normal. So where does that come from? That comes from the United Nations. They have, in 2010, 2011, some independent media reported on this. They passed resolutions and wrote documents and declarations saying children are sexual beings, children have sexual rights, and other global governance institutions like the International Planned Parenthood Federation with their exclaimed documentation proclaiming children are sexual beings, children have sexual rights. We must guarantee the sexual rights of children around the world. So what? Where did that come from? How did that crap get into my country? That wasn't something that your people wanted and advocated for and pushed up. that comes from the top down. Now, once it comes from the top down, the United Nations and their NGO, non-governmental organizations, which really means they work for the world government, the United Nations government, and the activists get paid and agitated, and they say people will feel really bad if we don't make everyone feel really bad by screwing up all your kids, so we have to screw up all your kids. Once the ball gets rolling, then more and more people will advocate for that. And even here in Canada, you have high school kids that are advocating to teach elementary kids more and more about sex. They're holding up signs, we need to teach little kids more and more about more and more kinds of sex so that people who have different kinds of sex aren't offended. It's like, what? So that they aren't racist, sexist, phobic. It's like, what? No, you're just going to screw them up, right? You're going to get them having sex with each other, or you're going to condition them to accept a lot of sexual talk from an authority figure and just make them pray for pedophiles, because that's how pedophiles do it. Pedophiles give little kids more and more info about sex, and then when they finally have sex with the kid, then the kid is sort of used to it. Not comfortable at any stage of that process, but sort of kind of goes along with it, right? That's how the FBI says pedophiles groom kids and so on. So modern sexual education in the West with this type of thinking is really pedophile grooming. So how did that get in your country? Again, that's global governance. And the idea of having a global government to manage 7 or 8 billion people is way worse than having a local government managing a few million people. Because you have much more control over that. Your municipal governments, your city government, your provincial or state government, and your federal government, you're much more likely to have some control and influence over as one of a smaller group of people. But when you're one of 7 or 8 billion ants that are less important than the earth to survive, then of course you're easy to mess with. And you can look at Europe and the European Union model, for example, where countries that used to be in control of what they want in those countries, and they were very different countries with very diverse cultures and people and languages. When they, when the EU was forced on them, and they said, hey, here's some benefits. You'll get to travel throughout Europe without a passport. Don't have to go through customs and immigration. It'll help with trade. It'll help with this and that. But it strips you of all your power to control what you want where you live. And that's why the people who are pushing for global governance want it. And that's the super rich people, central banking mafias, and others that are above countries. Not a racial thing per se. There's different groups involved. But those people are advocating for this so they can control the whole world. So that's a bit on global governance, and that's why you've got nationalists out there that are fighting to make sure that they and people where they live can control where they live, because otherwise you will lose that control. So back to the title of this video, Global Governance, UN, EU, China, France, and Germany's 4-point plan. Can local nationalists stop them? And I was looking at one of my favorite websites, whatdoesitmean.com, put together by some Russian nuns, ostensibly with the help of Russian intelligence, but very pro-West, very pro-Christian, very pro-Trump, and very pro-look, let's make sure countries can control themselves and be great places to live and great places to visit and protect the culture and vibe of their house parties, so that they're all unique, right? The nationalists are the true people that are into diversity because they want, diverse different countries and cultures and protect all these, great things we've developed throughout history. The radical left and the globalists, they're the ones who are like, no borders, no nothing, everyone beige, no cultures anymore, everyone corporate clones and commie zombies. So it's the exact opposite of what many people are sold when it comes to who the real people that are into diversity and protecting that are. It really is more people on the right and conservatives than it is sort of modern liberals and the radical left. And so I was at this website, whatdoesitmean.com, and I read some of their stuff, but then they've got articles that they find interesting from around the world that they share. And one of them, they just put the headline there, and I clicked on it because I was like, oh crap, here it is. When people go, oh, it's a conspiracy theory, oh, world government, global government, biblical end times, the world government, the mark of the beast, oh, the Illuminati, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no. 10, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you could say globalism, what's globalism? Now you can Google globalism and you'll find mainstream arguments for more globalist control and global control over the world, as opposed to nationalism, which is more local control over your country. Doesn't mean you hate anybody, means you love your country, you love your people, and you want to protect that, and you want to be a great place to live, great place to visit, and you want to trade with other countries. So when you go to Mexico, you don't want it to be full of a bunch of beige people that are the same as everywhere else in the world. You want to go to Mexico with Mexican culture, Mexican music, Mexican partying, some of the best of what the world has to offer in terms of technology and so on, and improving your cultural mores and manners and standards and human rights and values, but keeping your culture. When you go to Japan, you don't want to be full of a bunch of beige people that are the same as everyone else in the world, that are all, corporate clones and commie zombies. When you go to Sweden, when you go to Nigeria, when you go to Russia, when you go to Brazil, when you go to anywhere, right? And even Canada, world-famous polite Canadians, with European manners and standards currently being attacked and destroyed as we're turned into rude line, bitchy, sketchy corporate clones and commie zombies, as opposed to world-famous, nice, polite Canadians, nicest people in the world, great place to live, great place to visit, great to have a Canadian in your country if you're in a different country and not in Canada. I've been in Ireland myself and other places around the world, and they'll look at me a little funny. Hey, where are you folks from? It's like, oh, we're Canadians. Oh, Canadians. And they all relax. They don't care if you're in the bar and you look different, you talk different. They figured out you're Canadians. All of that is under attack as they turn us into sketchy zombies and corporate clones who don't respect each other enough to talk and therefore are easier to control. So these are the things that we've got to fight against. And and so I was at whatdoesitmean.com and I saw this article from Xinhua.net. Or xinhuanet.com, which is a Chinese news agency. And it says here, Xi, which is China's president, outlines four-pronged proposal on global governance. Source Xinhua from March 27th, 2019. And there is the headline. And there's the link. And I'll put a link to this below, but just to give you an idea of how this stuff is hidden from us. I did a Google News search on global governance in China, and and when I did a Google News search on global governance in China, because here it's only a couple of days after that summit, you would expect that there would be some stories about this summit in the Western media, in the New York Times. Should the New York Times not report, hey, they're having a global governance summit. These different countries and global bodies are getting together, and they're saying how they want to run the whole world. That should be in the New York Times. That should be in the Washington Post. That should be in the Toronto Star or the Globe and Mail. That should be in the major papers. That should be on NBC, CBS, CNN, ABC. That should be on CBC, whatever. But it's not, right? So, here's the Google News search for global governance in China. And I'll just read you, some of the areas this is in. CCTV, China TV as well. Xinhua, South China Morning Post, Xinhua, Axios, Xinhua. Financial Times of England says the EU must show unity in its relations with China, but didn't report on this summit specifically. South China Morning Post, MFA China, CCTV, World Socialist Website, MFA China. Canada Newswire, Asia Media Cooperation Conference calls for greater. So there's one here from Canada Newswire. But it wasn't picked up by anybody else. And all the Canadian press subscribes to Canada Newswire. They just get all the news stories. Reuters is a main feed. The Associated Press is a main feed. Canada Newswire is a main feed. And all the major media companies subscribe to this feed. And they do this sort of reporting on everything for the world. And then your local paper or television station or whatever will scroll through that and choose what they think is worth sharing with their audience. And yet they didn't share this. And again, so more world expects greater role of China in global governance, Beijing. So they're really proud of this. Can the emerging economic powers govern the globe? from the globalist. There it is, Rethinking Global Governance, Xinhua, blah, 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 blah. The Telegraph. .co.uk today says China and Italy walk towards stronger ties. So again, this is a bilateral thing where they're talking about China and Italy getting closer, but they're not talking about this global governance summit for some reason, even though it affects everybody in the world. And on and on and on, and more sort of South China Post CCTV. So that gives you an idea of how they're hiding this global governance plan from the West in particular, because if they destroy the West, the place with the most history of freedom in the history of the world, freedom and prosperity and opportunity and so on, and guaranteed individual rights and free speech and so on, if they destroy the West and take down the West, then you can't have the second and third world looking up to the West and the first world as a role model to sort of lift them up. Instead, you take down the West and that history of freedom and prosperity, and you take them down, you take everybody else down and put them under your thumb for global control. So that's what they're doing. It's a bait and switch on what we were raised to grow up with thinking would happen, which was, no, we're doing well here. We don't like the fact that there are poorer people in the world and poorer regions in the world. But as we do well and we trade with them and we share with them and we share good ideas and technology with them and innovation and so on, then they can come up. Global governance is meant to take care of that and stop that from happening. And the biggest target is the West. And that's why they hide these plans from us. So, let's take a look at this article briefly, and I'll put a link to it below. But it says here, Chinese President Xi Jinping, French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Angela Merkel, and European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker attend the closing ceremony of a global governance forum co-hosted by China and France in Paris. France, March 26, 2019. And there is a picture of those world leaders as suggested by the description of that picture. So it says here, Paris, March 26th from Xinhua. Chinese President Xi Jinping on Tuesday urged countries around the world to make concerted efforts in 4 aspects and jointly shape the future of mankind in the face of severe global challenges. So wait a minute. This is the president of China saying we need to make a concerted effort. Countries around the world need to make a concerted effort to jointly shape the future of mankind in the face of severe global challenges. Well, then how come our countries didn't talk to us about it? How come our countries didn't pass this on? Are our countries simply going to sell out? Do we have sellout globalist leaders in different countries pushing for things like open borders and sexualizing kids and against nationalism and patriotism and flying the flag and singing the anthem and protecting where you live and giving a crap about it, except maybe at sporting events where you can, sing the anthem and they tie the anthem to bread and circuses, but everywhere else, no more patriotism, right? So anyway, it says here, she made the remarks at the closing ceremony of a global governance forum co-hosted by China and France in Paris. Besides Xi and his French counterpart, Emmanuel Macron, the event was also attended by German Chancellor Angela Merkel and European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker. So if you see how screwed up France is with their yellow vest protests in the streets and so on against their open borders policies, letting in way too many migrants, not being careful about who they are, having those migrants, see this cucked up population with no pride or patriotism, no manners or standards, no culture anymore, instead of proud, confident people, all cucked up, lying, bitchy, sketchy, sheepish, sideways, genderless, commie zombies, and corporate clones. The radical migrants aren't going to integrate with that. They gang up and they rob, rape, and murder people, and you can't say anything, otherwise you're a racist, right? And you see what's happening in France, and the same thing happening in Germany, where that country, thousands of years old, famously proud and warlike and efficient and nationalist and patriotic. Now there's polls showing half of Germans want to leave Germany. even though it's been their ancestral home for thousands of years. They're like, nope, it's all screwed up, got to go. You can't go out at night. Things happen on the subway, like a random African migrant molests 18 women for 2 hours on a German subway train, while the guys are sheepish, sideways, bitchy, sketchy, ugly girls cucked up and make all the girls and kids act like that too. I'm just a victim, put up with me, act like it, don't respect each other enough to talk. And so that guy wanders around molesting chicks for 2 hours, right? Whereas normally, like I said to a Canadian cop when he asked me when I was vlogging about why I'm promoting polite patriotism in Canada at a local mall here, I said, look, man, if we were straight up Canadian guys and we were polite and we respected each other and we minded our business, then we would be cool. We wouldn't be sheepish, sideways shit, afraid to be near people, uncomfortable. We'd be cool. And if we saw something like that happening, we'd look at each other and, go check it out? We'd go check it out. We'd stop it. We'd shoo the guy away or call security. None of the girl's business. Strange men bothering her where we live. Bullshit, right? So we'd just shoo him away, or we'd have him arrested, But we'd stop it where we lived. But that's why there's these globalist attacks on gender, to make sure you can't act like nice men and women, so you can't respect each other, so you can't talk, and attacks on everything else and culture and so on. So these are the people, who screwed up their countries, who now want to take we screwed up our country's policies to the world. And that includes the European Union and United Nations, and China is the model to replace America as the role model for the world. Why? Because China went from kings and queens and emperors and dynasties to communism. And then they had communism. So they've never had a history of freedom and prosperity. And then from communism to, oh my God, communism screwed you up. Let's raise you over the last 20, 30 years to make you the perfect hybrid of communism and capitalism. Yeah, you can have a Gucci bag, but you can't say shit. Social credit scores online, don't tweet the wrong thing, thumbs up the wrong thing, or we'll zap your, we'll zap your card, which says you have access, your identity card, which says you have access to the internet, gone. Access to travel, gone. Access to your bank account, gone. Access to getting on a plane, gone. It's already happening in China, right? And so that's the ideal model, where you've got a ruling class, the proletariat at the top, and then you've got some bureaucrats, and then you've got some rich people, and then you've got a huge population of slaves, and nobody can say anything, or you get in more trouble. So that's the plan. And again, you might still have a Gucci bag there, but you can't say shit. And they're going to take that Gucci bag from you soon, right? Or they'll make it something really ugly and say you have to like it, like they do with a lot of things, and that'll screw you up even more. Back to this article. It says here, China and France, both important players in global governance, enjoy a broad political consensus and a solid foundation for cooperation on such major issues as safeguarding world peace, security, and stability, upholding multilateralism and free trade, and supporting the United Nations, UN, in playing an active role, Xi said. So it says here, they enjoy a broad political consensus and a solid foundation for cooperation on these issues. From who? From where? Do normal people get to have a say in this, vote on it, understand what it is, weigh the pros and cons? Where is this broad consensus come from, right? And they say that. They say they enjoy a broad political consensus, right? Okay, well, China is a communist country, with some capitalist flavor, right? But it's a communist country that uses a communist version of capitalism to maintain total control. And that comes to the economy and military and news and free speech and their people and so on, right? And so, they don't have a consensus. They don't ask for a consensus. They make the consensus. And if you disagree, you go to jail or a re-education camp. And France has their yellow vest protests going on, where their people are so sick of their evil socialist, semi-communist policies that they're burning the place down rather than see it kill them, right? Or until it stops killing them, right? So where's the broad political consensus? It's not there, right? And anyway, so President Xi noted that China, and back to this article, China and France are both committed to the principles of mutual respect, mutual trust, equality, openness, inclusiveness, and win-win results. It's a bunch of PR, pablum, and crap, right? The two countries, he added, have been jointly safeguarding the fundamental principles in international relations, advancing the improvement of global governance, and have become an important force for safeguarding world peace and stability and promoting the advancement of human civilization. So, President Xi of China is saying they and France are the role models for the world. If you see what's going on in France, what's going on in China, you can see that's total BS, total crap, right? Total censored internet, all the stuff that people don't want, right? And yet, this is the pitch they're making at this global governance forum, and that they're hiding from the rest of us, not being given a chance to say if we want global governance or not. So Xi proposed a four-pronged approach to addressing, quote, four deficits in global affairs. And here he goes through a bunch of pablum. I won't go through it all, but it says here, firstly, the Chinese president called for fairness and reasonableness to address the governance deficit. Okay, look, what would be fair and reasonable is if the UN was just like a Starbucks, a big global Starbucks, right? They don't have any power to control anybody, but they're a place where different countries could get together, get a coffee, maybe get a bonbon or something sweet, and they could hang out at this nice little global Starbucks environment, and they could discuss, different interests, not subverting their country or another country's interests, but discuss with each other, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? What do you think about this? What do you think about trade? Hey, we're a little low on oil, so we could use some oil. What do you think about that? Oh, yeah, it sounds good. Well, look, I'll have my people get on that and get back to your people. Hey, we're a little low on rocks and trees. How about, you get, minerals and wood or whatever. How about you? Fine. But if they're running what's going on in those countries around the world, then that's wrong, right? So I'm not against an institution that allows for leaders of different countries to meet. But the UN is not that institution. It might be sold that way to some people, but ultimately when you see, things like this happening, it becomes clearer and clearer. And as I said earlier in this video, when you see the crap they shove into your countries that nobody there wants, that they are pushing their agenda on us, not just being a coffee shop to facilitate different leaders of different countries discussing their individual countries' agendas with each other and shared bilateral or even multilateral agreements between countries. That's not what this is. This is top-down global governance, as he says. So, he says here, global affairs should be settled by the peoples of the world through consultation, actively advancing the democratization of global governance rules. So this is an oxymoron, right? Democratization of global governance rules. He's basically saying these are the rules from the world government, and we want to artificially engineer a consensus around the world to say we all agree with these things, right? Because the true pros and cons are not laid out. The plans aren't even shared with most people. They just show up and kick you in the nads as they get worse and worse. He also called for upholding the UN, a banner of multilateralism, giving full play to the constructive role of global and regional multilateral mechanisms, and jointly pushing for the building of a community with a shared future for mankind. Now, it sounds lovey-dovey. It sounds like we're all going to be, holding hands, singing kumbaya. Yeah, we're all people of the earth. But who is controlling those people of the earth? In reality, it's not a bunch of people holding hands singing kumbaya. It's a bunch of super rich, evil people in a boardroom around a table saying, how do we manage 8 million sheep around the world who we all control, right? Secondly, Xi called for consultation and understanding to address the trust deficit. So put mutual respect, mutual trust in the first place, narrowing differences, increase strategic trust, and reduce mutual suspicion. Take the right approach to justice and interest, putting justice before interests. Closer communication and dialogue between different civilizations. So what this means is attack nationalism, destroy nationalism. We need to trust. You cannot be suspicious of our global governance plans. We cannot have suspicions. You cannot question these things, right? We need to put justice first. What's justice? Justice is their justice, the UN global government's justice over local. So this is a call against nationalism, right? Against countries controlling their own interests, right? He's saying, no, we need to put these ahead of those. Thirdly, joint efforts and mutual assistance to address the peace deficit. So sustainable cooperative and sustainable security, discard Cold War, zero-sum mentalities, reject the law of the jungle, settle conflicts through peaceful ways. It all sounds good, but this is how the United Nations and why the United Nations was created ostensibly. After World War I, they came up with the first version of the United Nations. I forget what it's called, right? And they said, because this World War I was so terrible, we need a global governance structure where we can all meet together, a global place, so we can all make sure we never have a war this bad again, right? But then people didn't really buy it. People still wanted control over their countries. People were like, I'm not really sure if, I want to agree to whatever the hell you people decide at that stupid meeting. We're cool over here. Somebody attacks us, we'll attack them back. But otherwise, we just want to run our lives. And they went, okay, fine. Then they had World War II. It was an even bigger war than World War I, even bigger. So then after World War II, in 1945, they launched the United Nations. They said, we must use this to stop all wars forever. This war is so bad that we must never... And since the United Nations has been there, more wars than ever in history, right? More wars than before the UN, right? 200 million people killed by communism, regional conflicts all over the place, Western intervention, Eastern intervention, right? It's been just a nightmare since the UN was there. So the UN has not done its job in the last 60, 70 years to stop wars, right? Rejecting approaches such as beggaring thy neighbor, seeking benefits at the expense of others. Again, it all sounds good. Yeah, we should all be nice to each other, right? But again, this is about them controlling this whole process. And when you see the job that China's done with their country and their people, or France with their country and their people, or Germany with their country and their people, or the EU with their bureaucracy over Europe, screwing up all of Europe with their open borders policies and their anti-free speech policies and so on, you can see these are not the people that should be in charge of making sure everybody gets along and everybody's happy, because they couldn't do that for their own countries, right? And the UN couldn't either, for that matter. Fourthly, she called for mutual benefit and win-win results to address the development deficit, pursue innovation-driven, well-coordinated, interconnected, fair, inclusive approach. Again, it all sounds good, but it all just means you have to agree, otherwise you're scum, right? Otherwise you're evil, you're wrong, and we have to stop you and silence you. You can't question this. That's really what it is. It's lying, bitchy bullies, right? And they, I get professional lying, bitchy bullies in the media, who make more bitches, who make more bitches, who make more bitches out of normal people. You'll get the bump into, oh, excuse me, sorry, ha ha ha, oh, messed with you, oh, sorry, ha ha ha, right? They're just messing with us, right? Pretending to be nice and messing with people. They're doing that at the top, and they're filtering that down and screwing up normal people to make sure they don't respect each other enough to get along and communicate well and defend their countries. That's the point of that. Cooperation model of openness, win-win results, common benefits, so that people from across the world could share the benefits of economic globalization, right? Now, economic globalization is controlled, right? You might think ultimately free trade, where you're like, hey, totally free trade. Hey, I'm a free trader. I don't believe in tariffs. I don't believe in this and that. It's like, well, look, real free trade is just, okay, hey, I trade my neighbor my lawnmower for his hockey equipment, right? Because my kid needs hockey equipment, and I've got another lawnmower, and he needs a lawnmower, so we're good, right? But nobody managed that process. The modern free trade and free trade agreements are carefully managed trade. The General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs is a 40-pound, 5,000-page document that guarantees free trade. That's not free trade. That's 40 pounds and 5,000 pages of this company gets this for the next 50 years, this company gets this for the next 50 years, this company gets this for the next 100 years, this company gets this company gets this global process manages all of it, right? That's what that is. And if you try and object, we've got this huge agreement, don't object to it, don't question it, even if everything gets all screwed up. See, that's not free trade. Free trade is, my neighbor says, hey, lawnmower didn't work, I want my equipment back. I'm like, well, okay, fine, I'm sorry about that. Here, right? Not, no, we managed this process. You can't say lawnmower didn't work and get hockey equipment back. No, right? That's what that is, right? So the free trade is not actually free trade. It's carefully managed trade. It's a lie. And the benefits of economic globalization. It was also managed to put China in charge. The world's manufacturing didn't just go to China, right? It was managed that way through the World Trade Organization and other groups like that. Since the 1990s, President Clinton signed over a lot of the U.S. manufacturing to or the agreements to guarantee the U.S. manufacturing would go to China, because with the global governance agreements, they can strategically position certain countries to do better than others, as opposed to, no, we're all cool, it's just an open free market, we're all talking, we're all trying to be honest with each other and just get some stuff done. It's not that. It's carefully managed trade. And so they put China in charge of the world as part of bringing them up as the new world role model and destroying the West. That was part of this global government stuff and economic globalization. And we've seen that since, right? And them being the role model of the future role model of the world, and why they're so promoted in the West, and how they're subverting the West as well. Because a lot of that, we send them paper to buy stuff, right? To buy cell phones and everything else, right? All made in China, made in China. So then what do they do with that paper? Well, it's our paper, so we like it, we accept it. So they take our paper, and when we give them paper to buy stuff, they use that paper to buy us. That's what they do with that paper, right? It's like, hey, Canada, we're going to send them a lot of Canadian dollars to buy some stuff made in China. And then China's like, okay, we're going to turn around and use your paper to buy Vancouver. Yeah, we buy Vancouver. Now the average house price in Vancouver, Canada, on the west coast in British Columbia is $1 million or $2 million. So none of you people can afford the houses where you live anymore. Yeah. And then we'll just, we'll keep them empty, or we'll rent them out to people at ridiculous rates, and we'll basically run things, right? And so, things like a foreign buyer's tax would help be a check and balance on that. Or, like Trump is doing in the U.S., having tariffs, saying, no, we're going to protect our industries. We're not just going to say we're going to get all our steel from China. We're going to protect American steel and the American steel and coal and other industries so that we can make it. Now, we'd still buy some stuff from China. They can buy some stuff from us. But we're not going to say, because of globalization, because of the global governance and World Trade Organization and other policies, that China can sell us steel in America and we can't put any taxes on it. But if we try and sell steel in China, they can put an 80% tax on it. So nobody there wants to buy our steel because they can do that, but we're not allowed to put tariffs on their goods? No. Bullcrap, right? For national security reasons, for jobs, for the health and strength of your own, a country's economy, tariffs are a good idea. You can't just say blankly, I'm against tariffs, I'm a free trader, unless you understand that free trade is carefully managed trade. So it's either globalists and global governance structures managing your trade policies, or it's tariffs protecting your trade policies. It's not no tariffs, free trade, everybody just do whatever with it. No, there's another component to that, which is the people that are pushing for global governance, right, through these policies. So so when he says here, people could benefit from economic globalization, we've already seen how that's turned out since the 1990s. Over the last 30 years, it has not benefited a lot of people. Now, there have been benefits to new technology, innovation, trade, and so on. But in terms of what was possible and what is possible, and how optimistic we are about our future, the nationalists that are pushing for a bunch of strong, independent countries that are free and prosperous and unique and protect themselves and are great places to live and visit and travel to and trade with and so on, they're more optimistic about the future. On the globalist, radical left, and corrupting modern liberal side, they're pessimistic and they're just thinking about the past, thinking about how much they liked Friends and Seinfeld and comic books when they were a kid, and now comic book movies as an adult, so they think like they're an 8-year-old again, right? And you're not supposed to say anything about these things or whatever. And they're pushing for open borders and everything sucks and everyone was a racist, sexist, phobic. It's like, no, we invented all those terms to make sure nobody was, right? But they're recycling all that stuff to make sure that that nobody can say anything against the global governance policies, because they're controlled by these globalist leaders from the top down. So the Chinese side supports necessary UN reforms and safeguards, multilateral trading system. His country welcomes France and other countries to actively take part in the development of the Belt and Road. And the One Belt, One Road project is China's plan to dominate most of the world by the year 2030. So by the year 2030, they're in progress now, and they're doing pretty well. they want to control, and this is public. You can Google China 2030, or you can Google the One Belt One Road China project, and you can, and they say openly, we want to control, manufacturing and trade and industry and resources and economy and politics. They want to control all of that, and they're being given this power by the United Nations and the globalists and the super rich people above them controlling this crap. So they can take over the world and put them under this global governance structure. It's not so China can do well, on its own. It's so China can be the role model and the main influencer of the world, as opposed to America, which wasn't perfect. I'm not saying America was perfect. A lot of evil people in America. A lot of evil people use the American government to do a lot of evil things. However, the idea of what America is, freedom, prosperity, individual guaranteed rights, First Amendment, free speech, Second Amendment, right to bear arms, protect yourself, right against unreasonable search and seizure, right? All of these ideas. And you can be free and prosperous, and anybody can make it in America. And anybody, you can go, it's not just based on you were born into this class or caste, and that's where you'll stay till you die, and your kids will be raised that way too. So, nope, you got an idea, you got a business, you help people, succeed, and you make them happy with what you're selling, you can get rich here. This is America. Yeah, that was the ideal, and that's what everyone in the world aspired to. Freedom, blue jeans, big houses, big cars, travel, vacation, go here, have a house, have a cottage, have a boat, right? Not that everybody could get that, but everybody had a chance to get that. And yes, the system was rigged. Nothing was ever perfect. But the idea is they're even taking that ideal away. You won't even be able to, you could say all you want. Nah, they're corrupt, they're evil, rich get richer, the poor get poorer. It's like, yeah, but a lot of the poor got richer in America too, right? Like that's how it worked, is that you could bring yourself up, right? And so they're trying to destroy that idea and replace it with the Chinese model, which doesn't have that freedom, prosperity, free speech, guaranteed individual rights, and a government that's supposed to get off your ass and get off your back and get out of the way and just help you make money and be free and get along with other people, right? This is the opposite of that. So they're trying to destroy the ideal of what America's supposed to be. And America's done some really good things and some really bad things, and it's not all homogenous. It's not one guy named America or girl named America, like America Ferrera or whoever. It's the idea of it is what they're trying to destroy. And that idea is what we should try and save, so that every country in the world can emulate those historical standards. The most freedom and prosperity ever achieved by people in the history of the world is now being destroyed unless we stop it by plans like this. It says here, he also called for, so the One Belt, One Road project in China 2030, I recommend you take a look at. You can see, holy crap, look at that. He also called for joint efforts to advance the negotiations on a China-European Union investment agreement, right? And so, what does this mean? It means they're going to do the same thing that they're trialing now in Africa, right? They're saying, hey, Africa, we got all these American dollars because we sold Americans a bunch of crap that was made here cheap, and they gave us a bunch of dollars. Let's invest in Africa and control Africa, right? And they also want to invest in Europe and control Europe, and invest in Canada and control Canada. Buy our biggest steel companies, buy up Vancouver, buy up parts of Toronto, buy up different parts of Canada, buy up different industries. America, same thing. Buy up Hollywood, right? China owns most of Hollywood now, right? The Chinese investment has taken over Hollywood and is controlling the culture. And you can't say anything bad about China in any of those Hollywood movies. And they're making blander and blander movies for the international market where you don't have to speak English. You can just kind of read their faces and their body language and their eyes, and it's all superheroes just punching things and things exploding, as opposed to movies that reflect a unique culture, American idioms, as I heard a guy say, or the way they speak and the way they think and talk. All that's being destroyed for more of a bland pablum in the movie industry that everyone in the world can understand, but isn't really unique or special, right? So if you have a film that's over $20-30 million to make, then it's going to be bland crap. And if you want to make something unique, you won't get more than $2 or $3 million to make it. That's sort of what's happening right now. Hailing the China-France friendship, Xi called on the two countries to strengthen cooperation with a long-term and future-oriented perspective under the new circumstances, deepen cooperation, accelerate cooperation in emerging areas, strengthen cooperation. This is part of the all get along. We should all agree. Don't be weird. Don't be different. Don't say anything different or controversial or interesting. It's too scary or weird. Can't really say the same that much. It's kind of boring. So quiet, sheepish, lying, bitchy, sketchy, sideways people make each other uncomfortable, don't respect each other enough to talk, and don't want to talk much, and easy to control, right? This is part of that. Where cooperation, we must all get along, we must all this, we can't disagree, we can't be divisive, don't be divisive, don't be divisive. Okay, if we're not divisive, then what are we? All the same? Right? So this is part of their plan. And strengthening cooperation in addressing climate change, implementing the Paris Agreement in an all-around way. And climate change is BS. It's crap. It's been crap since they've been talking about it in the 1960s. They were talking about it, oh, the world's going to end in 10 years. 1970s, world's going to end in 10 years. Global cooling. 1980s, world. You can look back at all the news articles where they say the world's going to end in 10 years, every 10 years. And they scare the crap out of people, and they push some policies, right? But in fact, climate's always changed. They used to call it global cooling, then they called it global warming, but then after a while people noticed that, wait a minute, it's not cooling or warming, it's just sort of the way it's been. The climate does change, the climate, which is the weather over a period of time, but it's always changing, right? And it's not our fault. The main driver of the change in the temperature or climate on planet Earth is the Earth's proximity to the sun, right? It's how close and far we are from the sun. So that's on the climate, and you can look into that more. And carbon dioxide is not a pollutant. It's not bad for the earth. It's not bad for the environment. It is, in fact, what we exhale and what animals exhale. And we exhale carbon dioxide, right? When it comes to this giant mixture of air, we take in this air, we breathe, we keep the oxygen, and we exhale the carbon dioxide, and it goes back into this mixture. And what do the plants do? The plants breathe, and they keep the carbon dioxide, and they put back out oxygen for us. That's the carbon cycle, right? So it's not carbon dioxide, CO2, oh my God, so bad, so bad, so bad, right? So it's not bad for the earth, and it doesn't affect the weather, right? CO2 out of all this atmosphere is only 4% of all this. It's mostly water vapor, some oxygen, some other gases, oxygen, carbon dioxide, mostly water vapor when it comes to the atmosphere, just what you walk through, right? The air, as we call it more generically. And so carbon dioxide is only 4% of that. All of human activity, right, according to scientists who I've interviewed, among others, right, contributes to only 2% of that. So only half of that, right? So all of this is, the air. 4% is carbon dioxide. 2% is caused by human activity. The rest of it is volcanoes erupting, or animals exhaling, mammals exhaling, and so on. Right? That puts out carbon dioxide, which plants then eat. The more carbon dioxide, the better it is for plants. Plants, even greenhouses, will pump in 3-4 times as much carbon dioxide to grow their plants faster. Right? And farms that are near carbon dioxide emissions have their crops grow faster. So it's not bad at all. And even if we cut that 4%, that 2%, right? 4% of this whole thing is carbon dioxide. 2%, all of human activity, exhaling, and industrial activity produces that. Even if we cut that, say, in half, it would have almost no effect on what the weather on planet Earth is like. Almost none. Would it have some tiny effect, possibly, maybe? Sure, right? But as Professor Timothy Ball, a veteran climate scientist, spoke at a bunch of events, won a bunch of awards, until he came out against this, late in his career or when he was retired. And then they say, no, he's a shill for big oil and all this other garbage. Nonsense, right? As he said, comparing the effect of carbon dioxide, the potential effect of carbon dioxide among many other factors, clouds, this, that, the amount of moisture, all these things that could possibly affect the weather or the climate, comparing carbon dioxide to the impact of the sun is like comparing a match to the impact of an oven that is on. So if you turn on your oven and turn it to 1,000 degrees, and it heats up your whole room, right? It's 1,000 degrees, everyone's sweating, and you're like, this match is making it hot in here. And everyone's like, no, it's the oven. The oven's 1,000 degrees. And you have it open, and it's heating up the whole room. The whole kitchen's, I'm going to pass out soon. But nope, it's this match. This match, it's hot. If you touch it, it'll burn your fingers. Yeah, but it's not heating up the whole room. That's the impact of CO2 on the climate compared to the main driver of climate changing, which is the sun, and how close or far we are from it, right? So, so why do they use climate change to scare people? Why have they used it for the last 50, 60 years? Different environmental threats? Because a couple of reasons. One is they're commie green on a watermelon green, which means they're green on the outside and red on the inside, right? So they're green on the outside, hey, we're for the environment, and they're red on the inside. We're communists. We need to control everything. We need to control everything. We need to control all the resources. We need to make sure everything's sustainable. Everybody should use less. People say, oh, I don't like capitalism, right? Because people aren't equal. It's like, well, under communism, they're all equally poor. Right, and that's what the climate change, advocates, are really that the people behind them are really pushing that. Right, that's why, hey, big house, big cars, new technology. I want a boat. I wanted this. No, use less, use less. Everyone live in a little mud hut and ride a bicycle to work. Right, don't have any more kids. Don't do anything. Just sit there and die. You're bad for the earth. They can scare people with what might happen 25 years from now into giving up everything. And that's what this plan is. And frankly, when they can't get the weather, most weathermen and weather people that I know of, or when you look at it, when they often can't get the weather right for next weekend, how the hell are you going to trust them for what's happening 25 years from now? In 20 years, it's going to happen. Well, 20 years ago they said that, and that didn't happen. 30, 40 years ago they did. Right? And those crazy predictions didn't happen. So now we have the benefit of hindsight. If we didn't have commie zombies who wouldn't let anybody talk about it, brainwashing people into not letting anybody talk about it. Because then, just like the communists killed millions of people by making, anti-free speech commie zombies, they do the same thing today. Don't say anything. Don't say anything. We have to save the earth. Where else would we sit? It's like, yeah. I want a nice earth and a nice place to sit too, but this is not the solution. Can I explain some of this to you? No, head hurts. No, all messed up. Once we destroy all the evil people that listen, the communists killed 60 million people in Russia that way, or 50, 60 million in China that way, millions in Cambodia that way, millions in Vietnam. It's the same thing, right? No, don't say, no, stop. Once revolution here, then everything be better. And then they killed millions of people, and the ones who survived were not happy either. They were in some crappy country now run by a handful of idiots who brainwashed people into going along with this crap, right? So, much more on that. You can look up climate change. Clubofrome.org, the Club of Rome, they came up with this. They said, well, we want a global government. We know when you have wars, people rally around countries. So our country's at war, send your young men to die, for this country, right? Yeah. So you support your government. How do we get people to support a global government? We'll make humanity themselves the enemy around the world, and we'll need a global government to control this. Because if anybody gets out of line, right, if there's one guy in Pakistan who uses a plastic straw that might destroy the earth, get him, kill him. Right? There, good. Now, we got an eye on all 8 billion of you. Don't you do anything. Not the super rich people will have huge houses and planes, and they're in charge, and they get to live lavish lifestyles, right? Just like in communism. But everyone else, equally poor, equally miserable, don't say anything, right? So they're doing the same thing today. So the Club of Rome said, well, we can use aliens. We can stage fake an alien attack. And then the whole world will be like, we need the UN global government to save us. Yes, all the Canadian men, all the American men, all the French men, all the Australians, everyone rally, all the Nigerians, all the Brazilians, all the Chinese, all the Japanese, all the Finnish, everyone rally around the global government and fight these aliens, right? Alien attack would work, but really hard to do, right? But this climate change crap is easier. No, so they settle on climate change, right? How do we get the whole world to push behind a global government and global solutions to a global problem, right? And so that's why they're framing things this way. Anyway, I wanted to get on that because they want to implement the Paris Agreement in an all-around way and push for the positive results at the UN 2019 Climate Summit so as to benefit the two peoples as well as the whole world, Xi said. And that's why President Trump pulled out of the Paris agreements on climate change, because it's a bad deal for everybody in the West to destroy the West. You people have had it too good, so all of you can't use crap. Cut your energy uses, raise prices so people use less, even though countries are full of energy. Canada's got enough energy in it to run the whole world for 100 years, and yet we have to pay more and more for energy. America, same thing. And then when it comes to the developing world, third world, pollute as much as you want, no environmental regulations, do whatever you want, use as much energy as you want, destroy the West. It's like, no, this is not fair. This is garbage. And that's what they're trying to get us to sign up for. And the super simple sort of commie zombies being created are just, no, must save Earth, sign agreement. Do you know what's in that agreement? No, just must save Earth, don't say anything. That's the new sort of Earth worship religion they're creating as part of this process. So anyway, I can go on about that, but that gives you an idea of this global governance garbage and why we got to fight against it. Macron said communication coordination between EU and China play an indispensable role in safeguarding multilateralism. So again, two globalist tools. The European Union taking all these 27, 28 different countries in Europe, making them all act the same and push for global governance under the European Union, and China, a country created by the globalists, by the United Nations. They went over there in the 1970s after they screwed them up with communism in the 1950s and 60s. They went, oh my God, communism has really screwed you up. You know what you got to do? Here's what you're going to do. Under the direction of the United Nations and America and England and so on, go over to China. You need one-child policies. You need centralized communist capitalist hybrid system. You need giant slave labor populations. You need to create a middle class and a super rich class as part of it. So they've been building China to do this since the 1970s, right? And you can look into that more as well if you'd like. So back to this article, Iranian nuclear issue, climate change. Again, climate change is always mentioned. Also because you can't disprove it, right? Like you can say to me, you know, no, 25 years, you can prove they were wrong the last dozen times they tried this, right? In the 1960s and 70s and 80s and 90s, you can prove they were wrong. Al Gore was wrong. Al Gore said Florida was going to be underwater in 10 years if we didn't, do something about climate change. He said that in 2007. In 2017, nothing happened. They take polar bears and they show a picture of a polar bear sitting on a little chunk of ice. No, look at that pretty white polar bear sitting on that chunk of ice. Once that ice melts because of climate change, it's going to drown. That's as dumb as saying, look at that poor guy on a surfboard riding that giant wave in Hawaii, just balancing up there and having a good time and riding the wave for as long as he could until he falls off. No, that's what the polar bear is doing. They're surfing. Polar bears swim amazing. They swim really fast. They swim, they go into the water, they hunt in the water, or they punch through the ice and they try and but they swim like crazy. When you see the polar bear chilling on a little chunk of ice, he's just resting. He's surfing. He's just hanging out. Right? Just swim, swim, swim. Oh, a chunk of ice. Oh, what the hell? I'm sit here and chill out for a bit and swimming for a bit, you know. Maybe if I see something near me in the water that might be good to eat, then I'll jump off and punch it in the head and eat it. Right? That's all he's doing. But they make people so simple and so miserable. And you got to put up with, stupid, miserable people that you can't inform and empower. They can't inform and empower you. They can only make you a stupid, miserable person who goes along with this and screams the right things to feel better, just like the commie zombies that have always been created that killed millions of people and destroyed their countries in the past. So this is the new version of that. That's why. Because, and I had a buddy of mine years ago, back in maybe 07, 08, 09 or whatever, at a house party, and he was saying he's a good guy. He wanted to get along with everybody, good guy. He just said, well, even if, they're wrong and, global warming isn't real, because it was called global warming at the time, because global warming will scare you. You think, we're all going to die, it's going to be so hot. But then when global warming doesn't show up, they just say climate change. Every time something happens, it's climate change. Tornadoes happen for thousands of years. Now one happens, climate change. There's a flood, climate change. That thing, forest burns down, climate change. This has been happening for years, right? The ice age happened that supposedly killed the dinosaurs. There was no people around then, right? So, so he said to me, He said, you know, what about? He said to me, what about? You know, what? So what if we're wrong? Who cares, right? And isn't it just better to do something? And as I told him at the time, none of it's the wrong thing. Not if you're avoiding real environmental concerns, real environmental dangers, like mercury and other toxins in your food and water, right? Not if it's all at the expense of that. Real environmental is cleaning up the environment, not worrying about what the weather might be like in 25 years. So that's the commie-zombification of it, and that's part of this process. EU-China Belt and Road Initiative, Angela Merkel of Germany, sound cooperation, leaders meeting, EU and China to actively advance the negotiations on the EU-China investment agreement, maintain coordination on major international issues such as WTO, World Trade Organization reforms. Juncker, the head of the EU, said he's looking forward to seeing positive results at the upcoming EU-China leaders meeting. So, countries sold out to the EU, and now the EU is being used to make deals with China to increase more control over everybody there as part of this process. And that's how this article ends. So this is actually a PR, a public relations article, right? This is a pro-global governance article. Again, not shared much with the West, as I showed you with the sort of Google News search, and you can try and find it in your own if you'd like. But I have a feeling, I know what you'll find. You can do it a dozen times, and you're not going to find much, as you haven't found much over the last few years of this sort of thing going on. That's why it's important as nationalists versus globalism to resist this. Anyway, so as this video is called Global Governance, UN, EU, China, France, and Germany's 4-point plan, can local nationalists stop them? This is important. And that's why BK Black Krishna at manforwars.com promoting polite patriotism. Most people like polite, be nice. Makes it easier for the handful of other people to say, let's get bad guys. When people act nice enough to talk, and when it's normal to act nice enough to talk, unless you're trying to mess with people with how you act, you're probably not messing with people with what you say, and it allows for more patriots where you live to sort of speak freely with each other and share information where they live to inform and empower everybody where you live to help deal with this. So paypal.me/manforwars link below, plus direct deposit donation link below. Support the manforwars.com efforts and check out the site as you like. Get in touch with any questions or answers or to work together and so on. Otherwise, I hope this helps, and I'll talk to you soon. Cheers.